Hey you're missing out. You could be reading or listening to thousands of horror stories at deathbyfear.com. You could even share your own story with the world, so why not stop by? That's deathbyfear.com, or become a member and unlock access to true stories like The Skin Trees and The Gray Man. So maybe we'll see you soon. Would you care to take a ride? I can take you, but you'll never reach your destination. This world is a strange one. Uber is a great and innovative thing. Sometimes, it lets people earn some extra cash on the side, using something that most of us have, a ride. On the other hand, people can call an Uber to have a more down-to-earth experience rather than taking a taxi. It sounds good on paper, right? Well, as with anything that uses strangers to run its business, things can and will go wrong. Horribly wrong. Because you don't know when the next Uber will be your last ride. Enjoy these 5 allegedly true Uber horror stories. Oh, and by the way, I'm looking for some Neighbors from Hell stories. If you've got them, send them over at deathbyfear.com. Also, I want to give a shout out to some amazing people. They are Clark and Susan for becoming 2 of our first members. Thanks, guys. Anyway, taxis might actually look good after these. Number 1. Crazy Uber Drunks. Submitted by Reckless One. I used to be an Uber driver. After the experience I'm about to share with you, I decided that it just wasn't worth it. And I think you might agree, too. I was in the middle of some very hard times. I had a full-time job that paid $10 an hour, but my mother, who was 50 at the time, had just been diagnosed with dementia. Can you believe that? She was only 50, over a dozen years away from retirement. It just wasn't fair. She was single and I was her only family in town, so all she had was me to support her. It was almost impossible to find another full-time job that was not a waste of time. The only guarantees were minimum wage gigs at fast food chains, and I knew I would burn most of my income from those places just driving to and from them. One day, I had a friend at work recommend Uber to me. He apparently had a cousin that knew a guy that was making some serious cash with Uber. Now, I actually had a pretty dang decent car, a 2015 Toyota Camry. My mother had helped me get it with the last of her savings. I tried to tell her I didn't need a new car, but she insisted. So I applied with Uber, sent in all my information on my vehicle and myself. And while I waited for approval, I took my Camry to a car wash and got it cleaned up. I bought some scents to make it smell a bit more welcoming. The next day, a local guy came by to inspect my car. Then, of course, I was approved. Well, I did have a clean driving record and a clean title car, so I wasn't too worried about the approval. It didn't take long to start receiving pickup requests. I was honestly kind of amazed at how quickly they came in. It really showed how popular Uber was. My first pickup was with a couple of college girls. They had been drinking at a bar with some friends and just needed a ride back. They weren't rowdy at all, they just kept to themselves and let me drive. I dropped them off, they paid, and I went to pick up someone else. My first night, I ended up making $120 after paying for gas. It was amazing. I was really looking forward to this. A few weeks went by, and given my Uber schedule, I soon realized that about half my pickups were people needing a designated driver after a night of drinking. It was kind of humbling seeing how many people made wise choices. Growing up, I knew a lot of people who didn't think twice about driving drunk, putting everyone and themselves at risk on the road. Well, one night, I got a pickup request with a really decent payout. It was at a bar about 30 minutes away. Driving people around had been fun for me up to this point, so I wasn't hesitant at the least to take the job. I cleaned up my car a bit before taking off for my destination. I had installed a TomTom on my dashboard so that I didn't have to use my phone as a GPS. This place was really out in the boondocks, in a place I wasn't terribly familiar with. I arrived at this broken down old dive bar on the outskirts of town. I waited as patiently as I could out in the parking lot for my patrons. After about 30 minutes of waiting, though, I grew impatient and angry. Wasting time with one set of clients meant losing money. So I decided to give up on this job. I started my car and took off down the road. Not a mile down the road, though, two guys, middle-aged with pot bellies, waved down my car. So I pulled over, thinking that they may need help or something like that. I rolled down my window when they were right next to my vehicle. "You Jeff?" The guy mumbled my name. I nodded my head. Even from a few yards away, I could smell the alcohol on his breath. There's drunk, there's blackout drunk, and then there's this guy. One eyelid of his was open too wide, and the other was halfway shut and twitching. It looked like they were doing a little bit more than just drinking. His friend, on the other hand, was spinning in circles next to the tree line by the ditch. "Oh, sweet, man," he said with a heavy southern accent. "You're our Uber." Before he even finished, he had my back door open, which was stupid of me for not having locked. He scooted over toward the passenger side while his friend half fell inside the other seat, after hitting his head on the metal of the inside of the door. Though annoyed, I almost laughed at this. "Alright guys," I said as they got settled, but never bothering to buckle themselves in. "I'm not really familiar around these parts, so you might have to bear with me." They seemingly didn't acknowledge this at all. Their address didn't register properly in my TomTom, so I was stuck with trusting Google Maps on my phone after all. I started driving down the road, dead trees along either side of me. The two men in the back smelled rank, as if they hadn't showered in days. I had to crack my window to keep myself from gagging. "Hey man," one of them suddenly spoke up. This wasn't the same voice as the guy before, so I'm assuming it was the other guy. "It's a nice car. You make pretty good money doing this Uber thing, huh?" Yeah, I really didn't know what to say. It doesn't really feel like work, you know? Get to meet new people, drive my own. "You got any cash on ya?" He interrupted me with a question that made me feel uncomfortable. Then he continued. "I'm down 20, and I could really use it." Was this stranger really asking me for money? What kind of guy was this? I honestly didn't know what to say, so I just ignored him. I pretended I didn't hear what he asked, even though he had blatantly interrupted me. After a long, awkward silence, he went on. "Yo, man, didn't you hear me?" He was slurring his words bad. Somehow he was drunker than the other dude, who, after I saw in the rear view, had passed out cold. Then out of nowhere, I felt these cold, bony fingers on my collarbone, and the guy's voice was now right in my ear. "Come on, you obviously don't need it." "Sir, please just sit back in your seat. I'm not giving you any money. I don't carry any with me when I'm working." I lied to him. I figured it would make him knock it off. But he ignored it. Hold on a minute," he mumbled, and I could barely make out what he said. I was glancing at him over and over again now, through the rearview mirror. He was reaching for something in his pocket. My stomach began to turn. Then, before I knew what he pulled out, he had the thing against the side of my neck. It was cold and rigid. It felt like metal. "I made this myself. It's a buck knife, guts deer like butter," he said. My heart sank, and I found myself swerving on the road. I corrected my driving and yanked my neck away from the weapon. Before I could mutter another word, he spoke again. "You gonna give me that cash, or you gonna get cut?" We were coming up on a stop sign, and I was absolutely petrified. I had never imagined myself in this kind of situation, and at that moment, the gas pedal felt like it weighed a metric ton. I slowed to a stop, and I could feel this guy's breath against the side of my head. Just take what I've got and get out of my car," I said, reaching for my wallet. But I was afraid even if I gave him what he wanted, he wouldn't leave me here alive. This guy was drunk and high on something. There was no telling what he would do. But as I freaked out, my mind racing, suddenly the knife was pulled away from me, and I heard him throwing up chunks in my back seat. Then everything was suddenly quiet. I looked behind me slowly, and now the two of them were both blacked out. I got out of my car, taking the keys with me, and I called the cops. As soon as someone arrived, I told them everything that had happened and filed a report. They were both arrested, though the idiot with the knife was the one who got a prison sentence. And me, I spent the next day cleaning out my car. I stopped driving for Uber and I got a normal job. Even if it did pay less, I was done picking up drunks. I almost got my throat slit just for a quick buck. If that guy hadn't passed out, God knows what he could have done to me, and I'm not gonna let myself find out by driving another person like him. Number 2. Sharing an Uber with a freak. Submitted by HANNAHCOLORADO. I'm a 23-year-old girl living in Michigan. I live with my older cousin, let's call her Courtney, in a small apartment. We go to college together. We're doing what we can to save money. One weekend though, we had just got done partying with a few friends at one of their houses. A lot of beer and vodka was had, and the only sober one, myself, didn't have a car to drive. We had gotten there by riding with a friend, who was, again, now drunk. So I got in touch with an Uber. It wouldn't cost too much, considering we only live about 15 minutes away by car. So after a few minutes, a black crew cab truck pulled up. It was big and nice, plenty of chrome and not a trace of dirt. I opened the back door, and before I could help Courtney in, I saw that the back seat was not empty. There was another passenger there. It was a tall and extremely lanky guy with pale, pasty skin. He had blonde hair and a ponytail. The moment I opened the door, the guy had his eyes locked onto mine with the weirdest, biggest grin. I looked away from him as quickly as I could, helping Courtney into the car. Once she was in and buckled up, the creepy tall guy scooted into the middle seat. What the heck? Why would he do that? Could you stay on that side? I'd like to sit with my friend, I said. It didn't come out very loud. I've always been a very squirrely girl. Even still, I know he heard me, yet he didn't reply at all. He just kept staring at me. I rolled my eyes and reluctantly went around to the other side of the truck. I opened the door and I got in, trying not to look at or get near the strange man, but I could still feel his eyes on me. I thought maybe he was just socially awkward, so I tried not to judge the guy too much. Once we were settled in, the driver took off. Apparently, he was heading to this guy's destination first, because he wasn't heading in the direction of our address. But he did have another passenger after all. Now, let me say again, this whole ride, I wanted to avoid any kind of contact with this guy, so I was not looking in his direction. Luckily, he made no attempt to have a conversation with me or to get closer to my side. About 15 minutes into the ride, I glanced over to check on Courtney. She had been strangely quiet. I saw her head up against the window and she was apparently passed out. But before I could turn away, I caught sight of something that made my skin crawl and my face felt like it was on fire. The man beside me had his hand on Courtney's leg. He was facing forward, trying to be ever so subtle about it, but I could see it very clearly. He was moving his hand slowly upward. I was about to scream when he suddenly turned toward me and smiled that smile again. Then he shook his head at me, eerily slow. Yet he had this confidence in the way he did it. It scared the life out of me. What happened next went by incredibly fast. The man continued to move his hand up Courtney's thigh while staring right at me. But I built up my strength and screamed at the top of my lungs, yelling at him to stop. It must have shaken up the driver pretty good, because he slammed on the brakes. The moment we stopped, I jumped out and went to Courtney's side, opening the door and trying to wake her up and pull her out. The driver was outside now too, asking me what in the world was going on. I told him, and without another word, he believed me. He yanked the weird guy out of the truck, nearly throwing him on the ground. The whole time, though, the guy never stopped smiling or looking into my eyes. Just before he stumbled off, he licked his lips and mouthed something. If I had to guess at it, it seemed like he was saying, "delicious." What a freak. Courtney and I eventually made it home with that same Uber driver who didn't want to take our cash for the ride after that. He must have felt bad because he said if we ever need another ride to be sure to call him, that there wouldn't be a charge. I'm very thankful he was there because some people in this world can be real creeps. Number 3. Haunted Uber Ride. Submitted by 11 Jensen. I dropped out of college a few years back, and at the time I wasn't exactly desperate for money, as I lived with my parents. But anybody would want some extra cash to spend on things, you know? So having a decent car, I applied to be an Uber driver. But what I didn't know was that my vehicle had a salvage title, a damaged history, and Uber wouldn't accept my car. I ended up telling my parents, who were pretty intrigued by the idea. So much so that they offered to give me a loan for a deal on a used car, so long as I made the payments and paid them back for it. The next day, I went out looking for cars around town. It was hard to find a cheap used car dealership with used cars that wasn't trying to land you in a damaged history vehicle. Anything to make the dealer a quick buck, I guess. Eventually, I found a place that had an old Ford Taurus on their lot, a 2005 model, and it was a great price. It was apparently being sold on the lot directly from the owner, but the owner was okay with me making payments through the dealer. I was happy, and I was all set. So after the inspection, Uber was ready to go, and I was ready to start getting pickups. After my first gig, after I dropped off this local quiet 20-something guy, I had a very weird experience. I had just dropped the guy off, so I was about to back up to get back on the main road. When I looked into the rearview mirror, I saw someone in my back seat. No one should have been there. I had locked all my doors when my passenger got out, and no one had entered with him. But when I looked in the back seat, I saw matted black hair. The sight of the figure behind me really freaked me out, forcing me to spin around in my seat. But when I turned, no one was there. Maybe I just hadn't got enough sleep the night before. After staring at my back seat for a long while, convincing myself that I hadn't just seen a little girl, I finally drove to my next pickup. This wasn't the last time I saw things in that car, though. One night, after dropping off a young Hispanic woman with her daughter, my car suddenly died. It killed over the moment the young women had stepped inside their house. I tried to start the car, but every time it would just cut out. I swear at that moment, though, I felt the air inside the car get colder. Suddenly, I felt eyes piercing through me, and I felt like I wasn't alone. I didn't want to turn around this time. I wanted to pretend that my car just broke down for some reason, that I was just imagining the air getting colder. I wanted to pretend that the deep, slow breathing I could hear behind me wasn't really there, until I could feel the cold breath on the back of my neck. At that moment, I jumped, spinning fast in my seat, only to see nothing. I was so frightened, my eyelids were peeled back and I was breathing funny. When I finally gathered the courage to turn back around and face away from the back seat, the car actually started. I drove home in awkward silence. No radio, no company, and I swear I kept seeing things in between the streetlights outside the windows. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, curious, I decided to check my back seat. Believe this story or not, I know it to be truth. That night, I found a long strand of black hair in the seat, a hair whose size and color did not match any of my passengers I've had so far. I have no idea how it got there. Eventually, I saved enough money to get a different vehicle, but before I could ever afford a different car, these strange experiences just kept coming. I don't know what happened in that car before I got it, but it probably wasn't good. Number 4. Creepy Uber Driver. Submitted by IVM. You know Uber, right? You get the app and get someone to pick you up and all that. But sometimes it can go wrong on the way home. This experience I had with an Uber driver I'm about to tell you is the first and last time I will ever do an Uber. I'm a 12-year-old girl and I live in the northern part of Texas. I live with my parents and younger sister, so we don't usually do Uber. My parents believe riding in a stranger's car is weird and dangerous, and they were right. It was a Thursday night and our car broke down. All our phones were dead. Very convenient, right? Well, my sister's phone still worked for a while, and she didn't have a SIM card, so she couldn't call or text anybody. So we used the Wi-Fi at a local McDonald's to download the Uber app and to get a guy to come pick us up. Not too long after, he pulled up in an old rusty hunk of a truck. So much for first impressions. He greeted us with a lovely toothless smile, and then stepped out and opened the doors, saying, "Ladies first." Me and my sister climbed in while the guy was commenting on how lovely my mom's dress was. And by God, he lifted up her dress and catcalled at her. My mom was super angry, slapping the guy upside the face. You might be wondering why we didn't just get out right there, but we had no other option. We needed to get home. My mom got settled into the truck with us and held us very, very close. For the first 5 minutes of the ride, everything was okay. Then he started laughing out of nowhere, and I swear I saw something shining under his belt. Then he oddly took a turn down a dirt road. My mom said to the guy that he was going the wrong way, but he replied with, "I know." We were all so scared at that point. My sister and I were freaking out. That's when we watched as the guy pulled something from out of his belt. It was a gun. My mom quickly grabbed the two of us, opening the door. Then she jumped out, trying to cradle and protect us in her arms. The fall stung, but I could only imagine what my mom felt as she rolled down in the dirt. But still, she picked herself up and took us by the hands, and she ran with us back to the main road. I'd never seen my mother so afraid. I looked back behind us, and the truck had stopped. The taillights were out, and the guy had exited the vehicle. He was now coming at us. Then gunshots rang out. We were being shot at. I don't know what this psycho's problem was, but I remember being so frightened that I could barely breathe. My vision was beginning to go blurry. Luckily, we made it to the road. My mom waved to the first vehicle that passed by. It stopped, and a kind stranger stepped out. But then, everything for me suddenly went black. I woke up in the hospital bed with some breakfast in my lap. Apparently, I had been shot in the arm, and I didn't feel it. My mother and that stranger rushed us to the hospital as soon as I fainted. We gave a description of the man and his truck to the police, but so far nothing has come of it. My message to you all out there is to be careful. You never know what will happen when you're dealing with strangers. And number 5, Uber Scare, submitted by Rally. Me and my friend Alex went to this bonfire at the end of the school year last year. We were in 11th grade, and I had asked my mom if I could go. She said yes, but I had to find the ride back home since my dad was out on a business trip, and my mother would be out with my aunt. She left me a key for the house. I agreed, and she dropped me off at my friend Carlos's, the one who was hosting the bonfire. I was early. It was about 7:36 that night, if I remember. His parents were away, so someone had to help him set up the party. I set out the chips and drinks. A few hours later, my friend Alex arrived, and I was ecstatic to see her. I had asked her if I could carpool with her, but she said that she was going to be taking an Uber, but she said that she could get one for both of us. "What time do you want to go?" I asked. 12, she said, and I agreed. We stayed at the bonfire for a few more hours. A bunch of people were drinking and smoking. Me and her were the only two who didn't drink. It was about 11:45 when she asked if we can go. People were beginning to pass out and act like idiots. I was ready to go too. So we both began walking to the front of the house toward the road. We walked a few blocks down and hung out for a moment at the abandoned hospital there. We stood there for a few minutes while trying to book an Uber. I found one at a pretty affordable rate. It was cheaper than the other ones I saw. "Don't you think that's weird?" Alex said. I shook my head. "Not really. The price is really good. Let's cuff it before anyone else does." She read the description of the Uber. "Well, I guess," she said. So I messaged the Uber driver, and he said he could be there in a few minutes. After about 15 minutes, he arrived. The car pulled up. It was a white Cadillac that's a bit rusty at the bottom. "Hello, sir, are you the Uber?" The man looked creepy. He had long hair and glasses, and his voice was raspy. "Yes." Me and my friend looked at each other. She whispered in my ear, "Are you sure?" "Yeah, it's fine. Just don't judge a book by its cover." She gave me this terrified look, so I nodded to assure her everything would be fine. We went into the cigarette-drenched car and we drove off. I had asked the driver if he knows where he's going, and he chuckled a bit. "Of course I do. I know what I'm doing." I nervously laughed with the guy and looked at my friend. She was tense. I grabbed her hand and smiled. My phone buzzed. Figuring it was my mother asking me if I was on my way back, I pulled out my phone to check it. It was the Uber driver. He was asking me where me and my friend were. My heart stopped. I looked at my friend with a terrified look. I was afraid, and I felt like I had let her down. "Can we please just get out here?" I asked. "No, not until we get there." I pleaded, and my friend started to cry. Then this guy yelled at us. "These parts are dangerous, okay? Now shut your face and calm down." He was definitely going the wrong direction. We ended up on this road, surrounded by woods, when he suddenly stopped and killed the car. Then he got out. He was approaching our door. I looked at the front seat, and the moment I saw that he left the keys in the ignition, I made a break for it. In what was the most intense and terrifying decision I've ever made, I jumped up to the driver's seat, locked all the doors, and started the car. This guy may have had the worst things in mind, but he had forgotten to take the keys with him. Now, I was used to driving my mom's car. I had a permit after all, so it didn't take much to kick it into reverse. The whole time the guy was slamming at the glass of the car, trying to break it, trying to get back in at us. Alex was screaming, but I tried to keep a level head. I pushed the gas, and the car shot backwards. As soon as I had put some distance on this guy, I turned the car around and drove away as fast as I could. The two of us were scared out of our minds, and of course I didn't even think about slowing down. And not too long down the road, I got pulled over. I told the officer everything that had happened. He took us to the police station and called our parents. My mom was very angry, but more worried after I told her what had happened. Let's just say that after that experience, my mom was a bit less lenient about what I did. To this day, Alex and I don't know what that guy had in mind for us, but it couldn't have been something good. But I thank God that he left his keys in the ignition. Uber can be a great thing. It can keep drunks off the road. It keeps the bills paid for many people, and it saves many others whose cars happen to break down at the worst times. But it can also enable the worst kind of people. The people who see it as a tool to find new prey. The people who pretend to be your Uber driver so that you can end up in their basement without a pulse. Good night. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And don't forget to check out deathbyfear.com to send us your stories. Thanks.